So there are three types of authentication modes: open system authentication process, shared key authentication process, and then Wi-Fi authentication process using a centralized authentication server. In open system authentication process, the flow goes like this. The client first he sends a probe request to the access point. The access point responds with the probe response. Open system authentication request will be sent by the client to access point. This is the third message. First message is probe request. Second is from access point to client, probe response. And then again from client to access point, open system authentication request. Access point responds with open system authentication response. And then client sends association request to access point. Access point responds with association response. And then the next is as you can see in open system authentication process, anybody can connect to the access point, the wireless network. There is no secret key involved. There is no password involved in this. The shared key authentication process, each wireless station receives a shared secret key over a secure channel that is distinct from 802.11 wireless network communication channels. So here the client first sends a authentication request to the AP. The AP sends a challenge text. Client encrypts the challenge text and sends it back to AP. The AP decrypts challenge text, and if correct, it authenticates the client, and then the client connects to the network. So this is shared key authentication process. Then the third method is Wi-Fi authentication process using a centralized authentication server. So before going to this, we should know what is 802.1x protocol. 802.1x or 802. Okay, 802.1x provides an authentication framework that allows a user to be authenticated by a central authority. So 802.1x standard provides centralized authentication. For 802.1x authentication to work in a wireless network, the AP must be able to securely identify the traffic from a specific wireless client. In this wireless authentication process, a centralized authentication server known as Remote Authentication Dial-in User Service (RADIUS) sends authentication keys to both the AP and the clients that attempt to authenticate with AP. This key enables the AP to identify a particular wireless client. As you can see in the flow diagram, first the client sends a client requests the connections to access point. Access point sends a EAP request to determine the identity to client. So the client sends the EAP response with identity, and then the AP forwards this identity to the radius server using the uncontrolled port. So the radius server sends a request to the wireless client via the AP, specifying the authentication mechanism to be used. So the wireless client responds to the radius server with its credentials via the AP. So then uh, the radius server sends an encrypted authentication key to the AP if the credentials sent by the client is acceptable. And then finally, the AP sends a multicast global authentication key encrypted with persistent unicast session key, and the connection is established.